with more money get more speech, and that that's inherently corrosive to democracy, that there's a tension between freedom of speech and democracy, and that a choice has to be made. We also heard a practical argument. Is, in fact, after 10, 14, 13 years, are we seeing that, in fact, Citizens United has caused harm? And there's disagreement on that as well, pointing out that there's been an enormous amount of dark money raised under the regime of Citizens United, that dark money is inherently corrosive by letting people have influence where the rest of us don't know who they are, that it's opened up a floodgate of special interest. But we heard the pushback to that this is a set of problems whose potential harm has been exaggerated and has not been borne out by reality. I also think that we want to take one moment for people who might be listening just to, and maybe I can have your participation in this, to clarify what we mean by Citizens United. Citizens United was a case in 2010 heard by the Supreme Court with the participation of one Floyd Abrams on one side of the argument in the court, establishing a right for corporations and unions and others to raise unlimited amounts of money and to spend it their way to make whatever kind of political statement they wanted to make, as long as they were not coordinating with the campaign. They do have on paper a requirement to disclose who their donors are. Does anybody disagree with that or want to add to that? Okay, I want to important than all other forms of speech, and therefore would be in tension with your argument. So what's your response to that?
I mean, one could say just the opposite, that because our politics are so important to democracy, it is exactly where we need to be extraordinarily careful about the lines we are drawing. It's not to say that that means all lines go out the window. It's to say that we have to have clear, neutral, reasonable lines and limits on how money can influence our politics. It is exactly because our politics and our democracy is so precious and so fragile that we want to ensure reasonable, neutral limits. Citizens United, it didn't do it the whole way as a case, but it started a legacy of campaign finance cases that have basically shut the door on all reasonable regulations. So Floyd might be right that the particular film at issue there should be shown, but that doesn't mean that all political speech should run rampant.
And Francesca, could you make like one or 2 points in what way is democracy undermined as a result? What's the harm?
Well, it again goes to what is democracy. Democracy is inherently about equal citizenship. And in an unequal world, if you connect so strongly money and politics, you're going to have an unequal politics. That's not a democracy.
Okay, let's take that to Floyd. So the argument, I'm sure you heard it, but I just want to restate it, is that the reality of the world is that more people with more money would have more political influence, and that is inherently an inequality that your opponent is saying is detrimental to democracy.
I think there's some truth in that. People who have a lot of money tend to have a lot more power. They have a lot more access. They have a lot more impact on other people. But the one thing I can't sign on to, and Francesca was very straightforward. She and I used to teach together. She was always straightforward. But really, she said one thing I thought very fairly, and that many people on her side of this argument don't make, which is that there is a sacrifice of speech because of Citizens United. That is the consequence of it, that had we lost, I mean, again, it's not just the one case itself. The case itself, again, the Hillary documentary, which could not be shown if the law had remained as it was, and now can be shown. And that's not unique. I mean, the reality is, I don't believe, at least, we have to